Hello, in this week's episode, first Lex is bugged out, Martha gets caught in crossfire, and Clark's got hops. Then, it's a Smallville version of Clue. Was it Jonathan in the library with a handgun and tequila? We'll find out on this week's episode of the Smallville Chronicles.
Somebody save me, that you won't have to break right through.
Hello, I'm Lou Gonzalez. With me, as always, is my co-host, Ellen Muir.
Hello.
So we got, I think this might actually be our best pair of episodes that we've watched, like as a pair, because I don't think either of them are bad. First, we have Insurgence. That's the 12th episode of season 2, 33 overall. I believe, I'm trying to remember if the last episode was the mid-season finale.
No, that was the
Okay, yeah. So this is
the first episode of the two episodes we watched.
Okay, yeah. So this is the second episode of them coming back in season 2.
No, third. Oh wait, no, yeah, second.
Yeah, second episode, second and third episode. So kind of this episode takes place really in like one location. There's only like one real sub story, which is like the weird Lana and her dad story that we'll get to.
Yeah.
So basically we start at the Luthor mansion. Lex is yelling at someone that works for him because his dad, Lionel, beat him out of like a deal by underbidding him.
Oh,
So
yeah. The actor is Paul McGillian, who was on a bunch of Stargate episodes. Like he was on a random episode of Stargate SG-1. He was on all 5 episodes, most of the like show of Atlantis. So it was nice seeing him here.
Yeah, I did not know that. So I didn't even realize, I'll get to it when we get to it, that one of the characters is actually a comic book character until I saw what her character's name is. But we'll get to it in a little bit.
Oh, you're talking about the character that appeared recently on Supergirl?
Yes. I'm not caught up on Supergirl yet, so it makes sense that she would be in that show, though. So Lionel undercut Lex. He can't figure out how that happened. Only the two of them knew. So he basically sends the guy off to figure it out, and he trashes his office and finds a bug in a flower. So we cut from here where Jonathan's making a picnic, and Martha's like, well, actually, Lionel called me into work, and like I really like my job. And they basically have a fight in the kitchen. I guess I skipped over part. Clark shows up and helps him find that there's a camera in the stereo, which makes sense because Clark actually kind of steps into the argument that his parents are having and is basically told to like shut up and mind your business. And Martha storms out. It is actually like a really heavy moment, like, and you kind of felt it, like in Clark, like being like,
kind of felt like when watching it, it feels like you're there.
Yeah, it's just awkward, and it's like, which it's good because it's kind of what they were going for.
Also, I liked how trashy or the whole like Lex's office looked.
Oh yeah, he destroyed everything. Like they did a good job of. I'm wondering how much of it they actually like filmed him doing, and they just like used like 2 things of him destroying, because he's ripping up a painting, and I can't remember what the other thing the
pool table's on its side.
Yeah, but they show him like breaking 3 things before Clark shows up. So when Clark comes in, he's ripping up the painting, but he's like breaking something else with a crowbar. Can't remember, because he rips like everything off of his bookshelf. But it is interesting.
Not just that, he also when he finds the bug, it was either before or after. He takes his hand and just smacks everything off his desk.
Yeah, he does that, and that's how he finds the bug.
Yeah, and it's just adding to the amount of stuff he just ruins.
Mm-hmm. And I love the terrible, like, I don't know how to describe it except for like garbage rock that he has blasting. But it's kind of funny that we're like sitting on this when there's like a ton of crazy shit that happens in this episode.
Yeah, this is almost like that episode with Tony Todd.
Yes. All right, so from here we see Lex confront his dad about everything, and is basically like, I believe this is at the mansion, and Lionel's like, whatever, like corporate espionage is like a piece of business, and then Lex places a call to have a team of people put bugs in Luthor Corp. These 2 episodes have a lot to do with like Lex Corp and Luthor Corp, which is interesting. So then we get to the kind of beginning of the B plot, which is Lana shows up at the loft and is basically like, yeah, she's meeting her biological father and his wife, and is kind of wary of the situation. And Clark kind of tells her that his parents had a fight about Martha's job. And this is when Clark goes to ask Lex to help with everything. And Lex realizes that they are going to the headquarters, so he calls the team. But unknown to him that they are, I guess, also a team of burglars.
Well, not known to Kern, who's sort of
Yes.
the head guy.
It seems like they do that stuff, that except like sometimes they don't. And Kern was under the assumption that as they were getting paid a lot of money, that they weren't going to do it this time.
Yeah.
So before we get to that whole part, we have Lionel and Martha working together, and then he gives her a baller ass watch.
A baller swag watch that will come into play in the next episode as well.
Yes. And he offers her a promotion, and before she can enter the room, this is kind of when, so the crew turns on Kern, they knock him out, and the guy gets sent, and he finds them and enters the room with a gun. So we have their leader, Kern. So this is our first CW alumni in this episode. Do you remember who Kern? I think it's Kern.
Describe who you think Kern is.
I am pretty sure that he is, unless I'm thinking of the wrong, the character who is the lead
Of the group?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that is Kern.
All right, so it's Byron Mann. He was in Arrow.
Oh my god, who do you play?
Yao Fei from season 1.
Holy shit!
Yes, he was also Ryu in Street Fighter. Yeah, so I when he came on screen, I was like, wow, they really like reusing actors that they've used in Smallville, because it's the same crews and stuff for a lot of stuff. So it's funny. I was like, oh wow, I can't believe he was in this. Yeah.
I don't want to be the quote unquote nerd who just like it's supposed to be this. The Arrow team was, or the Arrowverse team is mainly made up of people who worked on Green Lantern.
Oh yeah, well I know like the writing and stuff like that, but the crew, the actual like filming crew, a lot of them are the people that worked on Smallville, like the camera people, the audio people.
Yeah, well, actually, sort of like half, because half of them did Smallville, or not did like Arrow in that. Another half went and did the 100.
Yeah, well, it's all like that CW stuff is all in Vancouver.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look. So wow, he actually has like some decent geekdom. So besides Street Fighter, which was way before this, I guess, he was in.
It was less than a decade.
Yeah, so he also did the animated voice for Ryu in a game. I'm trying to see stuff that he did that was more than just one-offs. So he was in Dark Angel for like a season. It looks like more than a season. Like he was in the entire series.
Now I'm just thinking about that episode of Family Zone where we were talking about how we were theorizing that James Cameron just stole the idea.
Oh god, he was in Catwoman like right before he did this.
Yikes.
Oh my god, he comes back as a different character in Smallville.
I am not surprised.
Like two seasons from this.
Well, that is when they started bringing in more metas.
Yep. I think he plays like a Chinese, because his name is like Commander Chang, so I'm assuming he's like some sort of not specifically named East Asian country general, communist country general. Yeah, he's also been recently in Altered Carbon, The Expanse, and a bunch of stuff. Because he's like a martial arts guy, which is kind of funny that he doesn't do any of that in this episode.
Yeah, the closest he gets is
Getting punched in the face.
Well, no, he gets hit. He gets like
pistol whipped or something, right?
he gets whipped in the back of the head. Then he gets shot.
All right, so this is when, in the story of the episode,
His skills were put to better use on Arrow. Season 1.
yes, yeah, he's great in Arrow, and they still revisit that character, like name-wise at least. I'm sure if they ever needed him, he'd be back. So we cut back to Smallville. Clark and Lex arrive, and basically they're like, "Oh, he's gonna take you with his helicopter to Metropolis so you can have dinner."
And Jonathan does not want a single bit of that.
Yeah, he loses his he's like a dick to Lex. He's just like, why do you think it'd be my business? And Lex is like, this was Clark's idea. He asked me for a favor, and he's like,
still a dick.
Yeah, and he's just like, you know what? Like, all I've ever tried to do is be nice to you, and all I ever get from you is like sanctimonious like lectures, and I'm done. And he just Lex just walks out. And I think this is when Jonathan says to Clark, like, it's not your job to try to fix everything.
Which is foreshadowing.
Yep.
Half these episodes are foreshadowing.
Yeah, well, that's there's a lot in this that ties into foreshadowing for like the end of this season and into next.
Yeah.
So from here, the next thing we see is that we go back to Metropolis and they find out that the cops already called.
Oh, I
This is where we
forgot. There's another Stargate alumnus in this episode. When the bald dude knocks out Kern, the blonde or the dyed hair guy who immediately pulled after Kern gets shot, the other remaining guy who wasn't aware that was gonna happen pulls his gun on the bald guy.
Yeah.
He was quote unquote Disaster Davis on Stargate SG-1.
I've seen very little of Stargate TV show. I watched it for like a season or two.
As it goes, it gets better as it gets like as the series gets older.
Well, I think by the time they made Atlantis, I wasn't watching anymore. Which I only bring up because Aquaman, the current Aquaman, was in that show.
Basically playing the same character.
Yeah.
But the reason I call him quote unquote Disaster Davis, he showed up 99% of the time when an emergency, like when something bad or some bad shit was about to happen.
Oh, that's funny.
He also played the wild card character in Falling Skies.
Oh, that was that TNT show, right? With the aliens.
With
And every season's like a different kind of trope on alien movies, but with the same aliens. Like they don't change cast, but like each season they kind of deal with a different alien trope, like alien movie trope.
Yeah, there's not and there's a character on that show that will be appearing on, I think, either this season or next season.
Oh, interesting.
The
It's not the main guy, right? From
ER?
ER. Is it him?
No, it's the girl who had cancer.
I didn't watch Falling Skies. I had just heard of it.
It was one of the blonde girls.
Okay.
She was on an episode where her and Clark were in an elevator. They're on a field trip to Luther Corps, something like that. And she has teleporting abilities or teleportation.
Okay.
And she just shows how wacky this show was.
Oh, it gets real kooky, especially the later on in the series.
I think when Clark is sleeping, she slips on him the red kryptonite ring.
Okay, that is something I know we are going to be seeing in like an episode or two.
Yeah, and this leads to them going to Vegas and getting married.
This is all starting to ring familiar again. So was this next season or the season after?
I want to say season 3, season 4, because what she ends up doing is I know because she was around when Lois was around.
And Lois comes in like halfway through season 3 or into
No, she shows up at the beginning of season 4.
Okay, so then it's probably season 4.
First episode, and then she gets killed by a guy who can manipulate sand.
Oh, Sandman, basically.
Not really.
I'm trying to remember. Like that's when we start getting to like all of like the metas. That's when this show goes like really heavy, like off the rails at some point. But I think it's also a point where we could actually make a lot of comparisons to The Flash and Supergirl, which will be fun, and I guess Black Lightning as well.
But that meta, just as I have to say, that meta is to this show what Shade was to Flash.
Oh my god! Okay,
like one of the most hated metas because he was just pointless.
He's just there for a second and gone, and just kind of thrown away.
No, he is only real. He was really just there to kill a character.
Okay.
So back to Smallville.
Yes. So at this point in the episode, Jonathan and Clark, basically after the fight with Lex, they see the news report, and then Clark's basically like, or Jonathan's like, "Oh, I'll catch you as quick as I can," and Clark's like, "Well, I know someone that can get you there faster."
But you have to do one thing. You gotta apologize.
Yep. So we cut back to Metropolis. Lionel's pushed the panic button, which is like this weird little PC thing he has in his hand. And then we see Pine, which is the big bald guy, kill Kern, who's Yao Fei. And then Lex calls and talks to Pine and realizes that it's not Kern, because we find out that there's voice changers on, I guess, both sides.
Yeah.
And
Lex is Mr. Green.
yes.
Again, foreshadowing to the comics, or a nod to the comics.
And Kern hangs up, or Pine hangs up on him.
Yeah, it says that Kern's not in charge. What was the specific line? Like, Kern's not in charge anymore?
Yeah, something like that. All right, we go back to our kind of B plot, which is so Henry and his wife Jennifer are meeting with Lana. They kind of ask Henry to go get them more coffee, and then Jennifer is basically like, "You seem like a good like young woman, so I want to be candid with you." And you kind of feel like that she's going to be like, I don't want some young girl coming into our life.
No, but she kind of is like the middle ground.
I would actually say it's like she's actually trying to protect Lana, and she kind of basically says that like Henry's not a good guy. Like he's
in all directions. He's gonna, but he tends to forget. He loses interest in things very quickly.
Yeah.
So just don't get it too attached.
Yeah, like he has a one-track mind because she's basically like, yeah, we have 2 kids. They're in boarding school. He doesn't pay any attention to them, and when he has like a thing, he doesn't pay any attention to anything or anybody else. They say implying like that she's in a loveless marriage.
Yeah.
And that their kids have been shipped away, and that he was like on track to become like a congressman, and just kind of got rid of all that stuff when it started to get hard. It's like her input. Although we learned something different later.
Yeah, we learn why in the next episode.
Yes. So this is when Clark arrives and he starts to like walk through the line, and he is stopped. Here he is stopped by Captain Maggie Sawyer, which I did not hear her say her name.
No. They just call her Sawyer. Or okay. Lieutenant Sawyer. They don't say her first name because I don't think they were allowed to at that point. But like, I think the character was still.
Yes. So this is a character who's pretty big deal in the comics. Like you said, she's appearing in this season of Supergirl.
No, she appeared in, I think, either 1 or 2 seasons ago.
Oh, is this Alex's girlfriend? I couldn't remember.
Girlfriend, then fiance, then.
Okay, I couldn't remember if her name was Sawyer or if her name was what is the other female cop that's GCPD?
Renee Montoya.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if she was Montoya or Sawyer because I know they used Montoya in Gotham. Okay.
Yeah, so, Montoya was exclusive to Gotham.
Yeah, because Montoya's always been GCPD, although Sawyer was also that would be Gotham City Police Department. Sawyer was as well. I'd say she's most notably connected with Batwoman.
Yeah, because she was Batwoman's
fiance.
Yeah, fiance before DC was like, no, we don't like gay marriage.
They got rid of just like a slight. I'm not saying that you're wrong, because at the same time they made Alan Scott Green Lantern. He was engaged, and then they killed his fiance.
They killed his fiance in the first damn issue.
Yeah, but they also, this was like when they brought up the New 52. I can't remember who was taking over, but they were basically like no marriages. So every single like relationship was broken up.
Yeah,
so
this led
Green Arrow and Canary were not together. Lois was actually with another dude.
Yeah,
the only couple that was still around was Aquaman and Mara.
Yeah, and they weren't even. They were a couple. They weren't even married.
Yeah, they were a couple. Yeah, they're still not married.
And
I'm trying to think. Yeah, because the big one was like
Dick and Barbara.
Dick and Barbara were not together.
Although she rejected him for Lucius Fox's son.
Oh, Lucas Fox? No, did she? I didn't read really Batgirl by Burnside. I do remember at one point that like it was implied.
I really missed the Batgirl, the Burnside Batgirl book.
See, I liked it before that.
Oh, and Gail Simone was writing?
Yeah. Oh, she's an amazing writer. And they also hinted in that time that Babs and Jason Todd had like a thing.
That was
there was like a giant crossover where Commissioner Gordon was like on trial for like a mass murder because he shot somebody who like hit something that sent a train off rails and killed like 200 people.
What year was this? Because
this is like right at the start of New 52. Like, okay. Or actually, this is like kind of right before Death of the Family.
Okay, at this point, I was still sorting my life.
Okay, so you didn't read that?
Well, no, this was like as I was trying to get back into comics after Hurricane Sandy. So I missed a lot of stuff.
Yep. Well, to kind of get back to where we were, so this character will appear several more times, including in the follow-up season 11 comic book. And I believe it's all the same actress, too.
Yeah, it is.
So she's in season 2. She'll appear next season, season 5 and 7. All right. To get back to the episode though, so she stops him, kind of shoos him away, gets his name, and it's like, yeah, every single entrance to the building has like sensors, so you can't just go in, they'll know, and you're gonna get everybody killed. You go back inside where Lionel's basically like, I know what you're thinking. If I didn't make you come in today, you'd be safe at home with your family.
And he's a total asshole about it.
Yeah. Jonathan and Lex shows up. Jonathan sees Clark getting yelled at by Sawyer and basically like, yeah, this is my son. My wife is in there. Clark and him talk.
Yeah, because at first she doesn't believe that Clark is who he says he is.
Yeah, because she handcuffs him. And this is when Clark reveals his brilliant plan of to climb up the Daily Planet building and jump across a 200-foot gap because no one is paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Which, is this the first time we're seeing actually seeing the Daily Planet? I know it was talked about last season. But I think this is the first time we're seeing like the iconic Daily Planet symbol, like on top of the build, like the big statue thing on top of the building. Because they spend a lot of time looking at it in this episode.
That's a good question.
I think it is, because there's like 3 shots of it. So when he first says it, there's like a very long shot on it. There's a shot later on where they're coming like kind of through it, and that is when we first see Clark standing on it, and they cut back down to Jonathan looking up at it, and then we cut back to Clark on it again. So they make sure that we know, like, hey, look, it's that giant Daily Planet symbol.
Oh, you mean the globe?
Yeah, the globe. I don't know what you call it. It's not a statue because it moves. It's something that doesn't exist in real life, where it's like...
Yeah, because we don't have that technology, even though...
No, there's technology where that could work. It's just...
too expensive. Yeah,
there's no point to it. You would need so much maintenance to make sure it doesn't break. Because they have goofy stuff like that at sports stadiums. To get back again to the episode, so the burglars finally get to open the vault, and what we see is a pallet of carved kind of gold bar style, but kryptonite.
Yeah. And Martha's like, what the fuck?
Because it's a lot. Like, it is a real lot. I'm looking at a picture. It's like 6 levels high. So it is a massive amount of kryptonite. They also start pulling out files, and like files get thrown in front of Martha and Lionel. And
one of them is Clark.
Yes. And then as they're going through stuff, at some point, one of them goes like, what about this? This looks like it's worth something. And in a jar kind of thing, they open it up, and it is the octagonal disc.
That would fit perfectly in the Quatchy Caves.
Yes. That we've seen already from the end of last season with the rocket. And basically Martha's whole face is like, what the shit? Like, Lionel he has a file on Clark. He has the disc we know about. And why is he hoarding all of this meteor rock? Because they still haven't called the kryptonite yet. So the burglars are annoyed. Lex calls Pine, tells him what they found. Lex offers him $1 million for the contents and a way out. And Lionel offers him to double it.
But they get to keep everything.
No, Lionel gets to keep it all. He says, if you leave everything here, and then you guys, I'll give you a way out for $2 million. Just leave everything there. Instead of like the $1 million to take it with you. And then kind of says like, I'll like wire it to any account wherever you want in the whole world. So this is what I was talking about before, where we get the scenes where like, so now, I think something happens where...
I just love how this whole storyline regarding revolving around the disc.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous and it's interesting.
Happens in this season and next season.
Oh, it goes on for like a long time.
I mean, it ends with Jason T with a shotgun aimed at the Kents.
Oh my god!
And right, like as the second meteor shower is happening, and he gets spoilers. Jason T gets taken out by a big old meteor, which completely wrecks and destroys the Kent house.
That's fine. We'll see that house again and the farmhouse like we just did in
2 years.
Elseworlds crossover.
Yeah, we'll see that, and we'll see what I'm talking about in 2 years.
Yep. And so basically I can't remember what exactly happens. And at some point, Pine brings Martha to the window. Oh, and they're saying like, oh, we're getting your helicopter ready. This is right before Lex had called. So Clark kind of finally figures out that like, oh, like they're not going to give him a helicopter. He has to solve the thing. So we see him jump. He definitely doesn't get far enough and lands like 3 floors below.
Yeah, he lands. He kind of first you get his first person view, and it just
he tries to do like the Rock and Skyscraper, but in a more realistic fashion. He doesn't make it.
Yeah, he just ends up crashing into into an office. and ends up bumping up against the wall.
Yeah, he wrecks like the drywall and kind of gets up and brushes himself off. He's like, yeah, and like knocks over a painting and then leaves. And then basically the criminals are like, there's something happened on like the 30th floor in an office, like just below us. And they're like, oh, it's the damn cops. So they send that guy you were talking about earlier to go investigate.
And Clark knocks him out, and
he chokes him up against the wall. It's like, where's my mom?
Yeah, that's not very stealth.
No, he's not stealth at all, and he's also completely giving away who he is.
Yeah.
So we get rid of that guy. Then they're still sitting there. Then he straight up like boots down the door, like Stone Cold style, and like
No, you're forgetting something that happens before this. They're about to do something. They're about to shoot someone, or they're in the middle of doing something. They're about to roll up, take everything out. Well,
the cops are coming in because they also saw the thing, and then he rips the power to the building from the wall.
Not just rips it, he destroys it.
Yeah, but like he just randomly found some like big wire and just like rips it out. And the woman is like, I can't remember what her character name is. She has like a goofy name. Bishop. That's the woman.
Yeah, Bishop.
She's like, oh, the cops got the cops got the.
She just says the cops got the power, and I really wanted someone to just say, "How could they cut the power, man? They're just animals."
Yeah, it actually for me, this reminded me of like Die Hard, with like the building and everything and how it worked. Like it was like, oh, really quick episode of Die Hard, and yeah, Clark kicks down the door, which takes out Bishop, and then Pine.
He kicks open the door, which knocks back Pine onto Bishop.
Oh yeah, that's what takes her out.
And then Martha yells to Clark to leave. To leave because of the kryptonite. Yeah.
She doesn't say like, "Oh, that's here," but we see the green glow. Before Pine can get up, Martha pushes the cart into the vault. He gets up and tries to keep it from being closed,
and his hand gets just wrecked.
Yeah, so she closes the door. Clark gets up. He pulls a gun on, I think, Lionel.
Yeah,
and Clark.
He pulls a
drill.
A drill, because that's how they were getting into the vault.
Yeah, so he pulls a drill on Lionel. Clark grabs it and like is kind of tussling with him for a second, and then you hear a gunshot, and Lionel, who is blind, just shot in front of him, killing Pine. But it's not like he necessarily knew who was in front of him. But this is again where we get the look from Martha, like, oh, Lionel's like not a good human being at all.
And we're getting awfully close to the episode where we find out that the certain person that he's been faking it, that he's actually
Although I don't know how long. I feel like he is blind at this point because he's blind in scenes where there's nobody else in the room. I think it's after the next episode when his eyesight comes back. Because it makes no sense why he is blind in the next episode if he's like acting blind, if he's not actually blind, because he's by himself.
Yeah. Also, we get a nice shot, or we get a shot showing how Martha just like slowly taking the disc.
Oh yeah, she pockets it
and tells Clark to
burn the files.
Which I don't know how to like. Okay, Lionel is blind, but if I'm not mistaken, wouldn't that make his other senses heightened?
Yes and no. That's kind of more of a myth, but you would still know that there's like something is burning. But like, what's he gonna say? Like, why is there fire? It's like, you could just be like, one of the dudes like had like something on them that went off and caught something on fire. It's kind of like a throwaway kind of thing, which Lionel does as we kind of close this out. When the police come, Sora's like pissed about Clark. And Lex is like, I'm glad that you're okay. We did everything that could help. Oh, there's also a point I missed over where Jonathan kind of walks up on Lex closing out a phone call and is like, if you had anything to do with this, like, you will never be in Smallville or something. Like, he threatens Lex.
No, he says you'll regret the day you entered Smallville.
But then Lex...
Or either that or you will regret the first time you've ever entered Smallville. Something like that.
Oh, I have it. It's if I find out you had anything to do with what's going on here, you will pray to God that you never set foot in Smallville. You believe me.
Yeah.
But as they're coming out, Lex is like, Clark, how did you get up there? And Lionel's like, it doesn't really matter. Like, he saved us. Like, who cares?
And then Lionel's just an asshole to
Well, because Lionel's like, it's like, they know that Lionel knows that it was Lex because probably nobody else must have known about the elevator. is my thought. Only like him and Lex, and maybe like one or two other people.
What about
So-
Dominic?
Yes, but he's not in this episode. So, but like Dominic wouldn't have any reason to send them there.
Yeah, Dominic's sort of a wasted character.
Oh, very much. He's just like there to be like a sort of antagonist for Lex sometimes. Like
Yeah,
he's like proxy Lionel.
and not a good one at that.
No. So we cut to the next day. Martha's
Lex tries to say that he's glad that he's okay, and Lionel brushes it off.
oh yeah, and he basically is like, I'll be out of the mansion soon. And Lex is like, I'll help them pack.
And
So it's
Lionel, I think even says no, like no.
Yep. And then we cut from here over you see Lex.
Where we see Lionel walking away
Yeah.
to a shot of the Kents.
And Lex standing there by himself.
Yeah, then the way they focus from his view onto them.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, just that sums down the series.
Yep. I think it comes up even more into play in the next episode when the Clark and Lex have a conversation.
Yeah.
So the last kind of bit of this episode, we have Martha has a resignation, and Jonathan is basically like, well, what if we pull a play out of the Luther book? Instead of you resigning, why don't you stick around? Because if you weren't with them, we wouldn't have known about the files, the octagon key, or him like hoarding all this meteor rock. So basically they decide that like she's going to stay with him to kind of spy on Lionel. And then Martha does not tell either of them that she has the key, and she hides it in a can of flour underneath the sink, which is a terrible place to put flour.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like easily would get moist and go bad. But so that is where we leave on this first episode.
don't we also then get a zoom in on the on Clark's ship?
I don't remember. No, yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah,
We get a zoom in on the space where the
would
key
go.
would go. Yeah.
Overall, this was a fantastic episode.
Yeah, I was just looking. So this is apparently the only episode in the series that Martha gets the most screen time of any character.
Wow.
And apparently Maggie is the first DC character post-pilot to appear in the show, and the 8th overall DC comic character to appear in the show. Yeah, this was a really good episode, a ton of foreshadowing. So I was just reading through some like sort of trivia stuff, which we've all kind of covered already. But I thought this was a good episode. I think easily I would say Martha's like my favorite in this episode. She gets the most screen time, but she does an amazing job at playing that character in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
And the only character, the character who I thought was doing the worst part was Pine. He was just kind of doing like the thug version of like mustache twirly villain. Like he was just so like your average throwaway thug character.
And he also had a southern accent. Like I was expecting to find my retirement money.
Yeah, to me, I like this episode not because of the bad guys or whatever. It's more about
everything with the two families.
Yes, and specifically like Martha kind of realizing the person that she works for. So I feel like to this point, she kind of thought, well, Lionel's not the best guy. He's just a ruthless businessman, but
no, he's a killer.
And it's like, oh no, Lionel's like, she even says, I think he just hired me so he can get more info on Clark. So like every aspect of like her thinking about Lionel just get flushed down the toilet in this episode. And she kind of sees him for who he truly is. But I think from here we could move into our second episode. Sorry. So in this episode, this is like another crazy episode that has implications way down the road.
Yeah, we open up on Lionel using his
talking pen.
Yeah, his talking pen to reading what's the name of the
book? He is reading, I think it's Good and Evil. It's a Nietzsche book.
Yeah. Which,
if you don't know, that is the German philosopher who came up with the Übermensch kind of thing, which translates basically to Superman, which gets referenced a lot in this show for obvious reasons.
It's referenced way too fucking much.
Yeah, but it's kind of where the idea of the Superman comes from. Which
and the iconic line from the pilot.
Yes. And so the line that opens up this episode is, that which is done out of love always takes place beyond what is good and evil, which kind of fits it doesn't really fit at all in this episode. It's just like an interesting line. But basically, we get our opening, which we will see like 5 different times, which is Lionel kind of hears something. Well, first he gets a call and basically says that I don't think Martha is going to be part of my employee anymore. Someone enters the room. Lionel can tell. No one identifies themselves, and then Lionel gets shot in the shoulder and like in the chest, kind of right under where the heart would be. Falls off the balcony and through a glass table.
He sold it better than Rob Van Dam.
Yep. So we find the sheriff and like a bunch of sheriff people find Jonathan passed out in his truck with a bottle of tequila and a pistol in his hand, and they arrest him
for the attempted murder of
Yes.
Lionel Luthor.
and possible murder if he dies. Because basically throughout most of the episode, we don't know if he's going to make it.
Yeah.
At the jail, Martha and Clark visit him. Jonathan says he had like half a beer before coming home, and he doesn't remember anything until the police pulled him out of the car. Clark says that they found the gun with the same caliber that shot Lionel, and Martha says that she could ask her father to defend him, but they decide to ask Henry Small instead. At the hospital, Lex goes to check on his father, but he's blocked with, aforementioned that we talked about before. Dominic blocks him and basically says that he thinks Lex shot Lionel.
In which Lex does not want any bit of, as he just grabs Dominic and is about to assault him.
Yeah, he kind of throws him up against the wall, but then he leaves. So we go to the town where Henry tells Lana and Clark that
he's not the right man for it.
He's not the right man for the job.
To which Clark says, actually, based on what I've heard, you're the perfect man for the job. And he just says, sorry, I just can't do it.
And then after this, Lana basically pulls Clark aside. He's like, I don't know what that was about. I'm really sorry. And also, I saw your dad at the mansion yesterday in a fight with Lionel, and I had to tell the cops this. And we find out that the fight was about Martha. So Clark goes home, and we have the sheriff and everybody with a search warrant, and they find the watch that Lionel gave Martha smashed. Martha says that she hid it from Jonathan, and Clark reveals that it was from Lionel. And then Sheriff Ethan says that the bartender at the bar said that he was like doing double shots of tequila last night and then bought a bottle before he left, which I don't think you can actually do, or at least not in any state I've lived in. You can't really just buy a bottle from a bar. And the sheriff also says that Jonathan's blood alcohol was 2.0 and that there was gunpowder residue on his hand, and eyewitnesses that saw him leaving the truck, leaving the mansion after the shots were fired. So we get like a whole lot of exposition here. The next part is kind of funny, where we get Clark and Pete playing CSI. They see like where they found Jonathan, and Clark x-ray visions like a bullet in the wall of a shed. It was like, oh, if somebody like put the gun in Jonathan's hand, they could have fired here to get the gun residue.
Yeah, doesn't Pete say, what if it just proved that someone just shot a shed?
Yeah. Pete does like a pretty good job of being like the voice of reason in this episode, especially considering what happens in a couple scenes.
Yeah.
So from here, and Clark guessed that somebody drugged his dad. From here, we go back to the hospital. Lionel's still in critical condition. Clark tells Sheriff Miller about it and that he thinks his dad's being framed. This is when Dominic is like, yeah, I think he is, and I think I know who did it. It's Lex. And basically says that Lex and Lionel had an argument, and reveals that Lionel bought out LexCorp through Dominic basically buying shares on the down low. And so LexCorp is getting reabsorbed into Luthor Corp, and that Lex will just be an employee like he was before. Lex is furious about this and basically storms off.
Yeah, and he says that he's gonna be taking his girlfriend out for the night, or at least that's the alibi that Dominic says that Lex has.
Yep. So we cut from here. I think this is when Clark and Lex have like a kind of argument as well. When Clark kind of insinuates that like maybe it was Lex, and Lex is like, "Don't say anything," kind of that you won't take back.
No, he says like, don't say anything you're gonna regret later on.
Yeah. So we go to Lana talking to Chloe. So this is the first time she's appeared since 2 episodes ago.
And she has some change in her hair.
Yeah, she's got a couple little pink highlights, and she's
which comes into play next episode.
Yeah, she's only in this for this one scene, and basically did what she did with Clark. And she even addresses like, most people hate when I do this, but like I kind of investigated your bio dad, and he used to work for a law firm that worked for LexCorp, and he was actually a criminal defense attorney. And then he got fired from his firm after Luther Corp filed a complaint.
Yeah.
So
It was. I mean, you gotta. As much as we love the character of Lionel, John Glover's a busy actor. He's only in like a little over half the episodes
yeah, he gets a much bigger role as
the series goes on.
yeah, and then he's gone for a while, and then he's back hardcore for like the last 2 seasons, I think. He's kind of always in and out, but there are times when he's like there the entire time. So
he comes back he comes back hardcore in season 10.
yes. So Clark goes to the mansion to confront Lex. Oh, this is, I guess, that when that happens, and Lex basically throws him out. Martha visits Jonathan. Jonathan is basically like, no jury's gonna believe I'm innocent, and this is all my fault, even if I didn't do it. So then we go back to the CSI team of Clark and Pete. They check out the Wild Coyote bar and ask, and basically the guy is like, yeah, Jonathan was like getting hammered.
And he was venting to everybody who could listen.
Clark basically picks him up off the ground and throws him up against, like, not the roof, but like a cross, like a beam, like way overhead.
And the guy who went to high school with Jonathan, just like Sheriff Ethan.
Oh, now you're blowing some connecting some threads here. Here's spoilers for like 2 scenes from now. But yeah, so basically he does have a line where he's like, "You're just as terrible as your father."
Yeah, and I think Pete has to
pull Clark off.
Yeah.
And basically they decide to leave. As they're leaving and talking about it, 18-wheeler runs them off the road, and the driver gets out. He is masked. As the car like doesn't get destroyed, but is like jumps like 10 feet off the ground and lands. The guy gets out of the truck, the masked man, and shoots the trunk and sets off an explosion that is the size of like a small nuclear device.
Well,
it is such a big explosion.
Talk a bit more back to destroying cars.
But this is the most destroyed car, which again, I love.
They needed to make up for the cars that weren't destroyed.
Yes. But like I love it was a really early on Mythbusters, like season 1, and they proved that like there's like no way to actually do this with a gun. Like, you know, in movies when you see them shoot like a gas tank and the car explodes.
I mean like in a bunch of GTA games?
Yeah, that can't happen. And I've actually seen a car accidentally light on fire. It does burn down quick, but it just like catches on fire and then it goes out once it's burned everything. Like, it doesn't explode because there's nothing. Gasoline is flammable, not explosive. I can't remember the correct terminology, but yeah. So there's a giant explosion. Clark protects Pete. We go to the hospital because Pete's getting checked at, and this is when
this car just like wrecked, destroyed.
That was a nice sports car.
Yeah, how did he get it?
Maybe he sold his dirt bike from last couple episodes ago.
Oh no, he sold his and Clark's.
Yeah. So Clark and Lex talk, and Lex gives up the theory that Dominic shot him. It's like, yeah, he was unhappy because after Lex left, he kind of stayed around and listened. And basically Lionel's like, well, yeah, like, you're a good soldier, but Lex's blood. And I always planned for him to kind of come back into the fold and like let him do his thing outside. And now he's back in the fold.
Oh yeah, because I forgot to mention that when Dominic and Lex were talking
he says something
like you're really pathetic if you really think, are you really that pathetic if you or that stupid if you think that Lionel's grooming you?
Yeah, so I couldn't remember. I don't remember how the Dominic things ends, but I was like, oh, was it Dominic the entire time? So like when I first got shot, I was like, Dominic showed up. I was like, oh, is it him? And this is how they got rid of him, which would have made way more sense than what actually happens. Because what actually happens is confusing and dumb.
We'll get to that one.
Yes.
I won't accidentally spoil the episode.
We'll just wait another 5 minutes to do that. So this is when we get back to the dumb Lana thing. So she basically confronts Henry. She makes him come to the Talon and basically drops all the information on him. And then he's basically like flips out on her. And then he kind of like takes a second and cools off after Lana's like, whatever, go away. And then is like kind of gives her the real story. And like, if you would have kept digging, there was like this case that was like unethical and I wouldn't go through with it. And that there was basically somebody went to jail for being proved for a crime. And then 2 years later, they found the evidence that exonerated him, but he had already been put to death. And after that, I've been trying to make up for all of the bad things I did working for the Luthers by like fighting for the little guy and trying to right wrongs. So he goes with Lana and they meet with Jonathan and they they plan to bail him out, but the bartender has gone missing from the bar. And so Clark and Pete go back to the bar to try to find him. They end up finding his dead body in the kind of key piece of evidence to connect all the pieces, which is a photo that they find after they close the freezer in which they found the bartender's body. And Pete makes a joke about him sleeping with the fishes. And basically they put out the news to, I see there's Lex talking about it, Dominic, but basically they put out that Lionel's going to get better and he's going to survive. They talk about it with Jonathan. So then we cut to the hospital room and we see the bed where Lionel is supposed to be get shot up a bunch with a silencer. And it's not actually Jonathan there. Clark comes in, takes the gun away. And then I think he also shows that there's a camera there. And then we find out that the sheriff and the bartender came up with this plan to frame Jonathan, who was also their classmate as well. And we kind of get the whole backstory of the whole thing here, where so like the sheriff basically was able to manipulate everything.
So I just have some Superman ties with the actor who plays Henry Small, Patrick Cassidy.
Okay.
He was on in '97. He had a recurring role on Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, and he is the uncle of Katie Cassidy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And she just got married over the weekend, I believe, because I follow her on Instagram.
Dude, who doesn't?
I know. I follow all of the Flareoverse people. But let's close out this last little bit of the episode. So Clark is talking to Lex with the dad's yearbook. It's basically like, how could people so close together be like betrayed? And this is where Lex basically says, let me see if I can find the quote. It's Lex goes, it's hard to imagine working for a man who can rage for people enough to the point where any of them could have a motive to kill you. Clark goes, even you. And Lex goes, you know that darkness you were talking about? I don't think we're born with it. I think people like my father find a way to bring it out. And then they basically leave on that they're okay.
And I find it funny that even though he's only in it for 2 scenes or 2 or 3 scenes, Darkness ends up like the whole thing with Lex and Lionel and Darkness.
Oh, that scene is ridiculous. Because basically Lionel's like, this is all your fault. Like, if you didn't try to strike out on your own, none of this would have happened. Because the reason he has a relationship with the sheriff is that is who he got to get the dirt on all the board members of LexCorp.
Yeah, who got them to sell their shares to Dominic.
Yes. And then basically we see the backstory. And then when he's like, oh, this is a one-time thing, he's like, oh, really? That's why you wanted the money up front? And it's basically oh, isn't a sheriff an elected position?
Yeah, and he says, while I know my opinions on me aren't that good in this town, for you it's your whole life in this town. And this is both Sheriff Ethan's last episode and Dominic's last episode, because both are never seen again.
I'm sorry, who was never seen again? Ethan and
Dominic.
Oh, really? We don't get a...
No, this is the last episode for both of them.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that they just kind of ignored Dominic. I have a couple of interesting little things. So Sheriff Ethan at this point had the most recurring episodes. So he had done 14 episodes.
He had more episodes than Callum Blue, who played Zod in season 9, and more episodes than Davis Bloom, aka Doomsday, aka Asian Liberty on Supergirl, aka Starkiller, aka the man who's just been in everything, Sam Witwer,
Yes.
which I've been catching up on Supergirl.
Oh, he's great on Supergirl.
Oh my god, the episode where they go into his background just broke me.
Yeah, because it's
like
we talked about it on like the recap episode on the first episode of Supergirl Reveal and Phantom Zone. They do like a good job of showing like, oh, this is how like a smart and intelligent kind of free thinking person could fall down this hole. And they also connect it to like everything horrible that has happened throughout the series.
Yeah.
The other thing that's funny, so the Wild Coyote is a real bar
Oh
in
yeah,
Vancouver.
that and the road that Jonathan takes to get from there to the back to the Kent farm, is that an actual
Oh.
road? So next time we do an episode of And Now Comics, we have to talk to Connor about this
Okay.
because he has mentioned stuff about.
Oh, that he lives near there, yes. 'Cause
Yeah.
he's had friends that have appeared in episodes.
I still want to know who his friend was on fucking Riverdale.
Yeah, I have no idea. Oh, and that is our second person that is on CW in here. Good call. So not Henry Rollins.
Please tell me that's not Sheriff Keller.
No, it's not Henry Rollins. Is the doctor that appears that you called not Henry Rollins before we started?
Yeah.
That is Cheryl's dad and
Oh my-
uncle.
Oh my god, he's aged terribly.
Well, he looks exactly the same.
I can't believe Clifford Blossom. Or the
Uh,
actor's name.
Yeah, his name is he's just called Doctor, but it's played by Barclay Hope. Is that it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the unnamed doctor. Yeah, so he is I can't remember what they Blossom, right?
Clifford Blossom and
Clifford.
something,
Yeah, the uncle, his twin brother.
which is basically just him.
Without the wig.
Yeah.
But it's a wig in the show too, so yeah, that's when I was like, oh, again, CW likes to reuse people. Apparently they returned to Dominic in the comic book at some point.
I'm so mad that I can't actually get the comic book because it's out of print.
Yeah, I'm sure you can find it somewhere, but I might find a way to read it just so like I can see some of it. But I might wait until we get farther down so like I can actually remember continuity.
That actually is one of the name. That's the name of one of the traits.
Yeah.
Continuity.
That's funny. But I think this episode is good. It's again tons of foreshadowing. I think if I was gonna say an MVP, it's probably Jonathan in this episode.
Jonathan, my MVP is Jonathan for both episodes. Because again, range. And my LVP has to be for the last episode was the guy who killed Yao Fei.
Oh yeah, Pine. It was the same for me.
And for this episode, the LVP is Dominic.
Yeah, I think it's for many similar reasons. He just plays the character so big.
Yeah, like you think it'd be Sheriff Ethan, but like just examining his relationship with the Kents, he's sort of like an extended member of the family.
Oh yeah, he's like again, like we said, like he's in this show so much in these early seasons, these first two seasons. But I do think it's an interesting take on like again, like the darkness of Lionel specifically, how he is such a corrupting force. That he drove somebody who has been nothing but a good person and close to the Kents to frame Jonathan for murder.
Yeah, there's also a continuity error regarding when Clark is looking at his dad's yearbook.
Yes, I saw that too. I think it's in the first episode, the pilot episode, Clark says that he took his dad's old position, which was a tailback. And in this, he says that Jonathan was the quarterback.
Yeah.
Based on the yearbook quote, which he could have been both at different times. So, but it's still like a dumb oversight. But I think that wraps up on these two episodes. Let's do a quick preview of the next two. So the first one will be Rush. So this is kind of like...
Yeah, Rave in the Cave.
Yes. So Pete and Chloe get infected with a parasitic worm, and Pete puts a red kryptonite ring on Clark, and the three of them basically go cuckoo bananas.
Party!
Yes. And we get a makeout between Clark and Chloe in front of Lana, because, And then our second episode brings in Lucas, the apparent son that Lionel gave up for adoption that we heard about.
I don't want to watch this episode. I hate it.
It's so terrible, but it reminds me, like, it's one of the most memorable episodes in the series for me. Like, I just remember the pool, like when they're playing pool and he gets him to sign it, and Glover does such a good job at playing a character who's trying to pretend, like who's trying to put on an act poorly. Like, I feel like for good actors, it is hard to purposely act bad. But yeah, so that is the next pair of episodes we will watch. And then after that is when we start to get into some crazy, crazy episodes, which is when Clark gets sick, and then Rosetta, which is the first episode with
the real My Superman, Christopher Reeve.
Yep. So I think we can leave that off here. I would say, so me and Alan do a couple other shows. So every Thursday, you have the two of us and some other people, or usually the two of us, talking about comic books, both weekly and sometimes stuff we've read in the past, kind of going over some comic book news. Obviously, we both appear at times on the regular Phantom Zone podcast and After Dark. We also have a new show that should be coming out this week, or
that will be after this week. We'll be releasing bi-weekly.
That will be appearing on the Los Horror Podcast Network, and Al and me both write for loshorror.wordpress.com. Is that the correct website?
Yeah.
All right. And then you do a podcast that I have guested on twice that is doing amazingly well.
Yeah, Los Horror Games podcast. Let's check see where it stands right now. It is now sitting at 377.
Awesome. And yeah, so you can check out all those shows every week. And don't forget to join the Facebook group, the Phantom Zone. And
and don't forget to like the Los Horror Games Facebook page.
Yep. And so review, subscribe, share all of the podcasts on all your podcast platforms. And we will catch you guys on the next episode. I'm Lou Gonzalez.
I'm Alan Muir.
And this podcast stands for Truth, Justice, and the American Way.